Okay, hello ESL 42 class. This is our video lecture that has to do with our first reading assignment in Fahrenheit 451. That's from pages 1 to page 21. And I know that some of you are already a little bit confused about the story because it's fiction and it's science fiction. So I guess what I want to first explain to you is as you're reading, you must realize, of course, that this was written a long time ago, but it was written about a future imagined world. Now, sometimes people who tell stories like to imagine a beautiful, wonderful world in the future, but often, as is the case with some fiction writing, when we write about our imagined future, we think about what would happen if something terrible was to take place. And this is what they call a dystopian. That means a bad future. Utopian means a wonderful future where it's like heaven. Dystopian means it's poor people, they're unhappy, and it's a very bad time. And this particular novel is actually about a bad imagining of the future. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on here to help you understand this action of the novel. Here, when we talk about the hearth and the salamander, I'm not quite sure what that title means, but the first person we meet is on page 2, and you should have marked the name Guy Montague is his name, Guy Montague. Okay, so Montague is a fireman, but in this picture of the future, what you probably already know by now is a fireman in this future doesn't put fires out, they actually start fires. And you might think, well, why would anyone want to start a fire? And this really has to do with, I believe, censorship. And censorship is when we don't allow people to get information. So when we see, if we continue, in the novel, we see that what he's burning up is people's books in their houses. We actually find that out a little bit later during our reading. If you looked at page 6 at the top, you will see some names that they put there. Millay, Whitman, and Faulkner. That's Edna St. Vincent Millay, a poet. She wrote poetry. Walt Whitman and William Faulkner, both famous novelists. So here we see he's burning the books and he's burning the houses in which the books are kept. So why would people want to burn books? As we go through the novel, we'll find out the reasons for that. But if I'm going back now to page 2, they're describing here in the center of page 2 a firehouse. And when they talk about the golden pole, it's just like a firehouse in these days, usually the upstairs area where the firemen sleep and play games, and the downstairs part of the fire station is where they go to get in the trucks and go put fires out. Of course, these are a different kind of firemen. They start fires, so we'll talk a little more about that, but they're describing everything the same as a firehouse. They usually slide down the pole from the upstairs area to the downstairs so that they can very quickly go out of the firehouse and put out a fire. But of course, in this weird dystopian or bad imagining of the future, the firemen actually go out and start fires when they find people who have books. Okay, we also meet a girl here, Clarice, and there's something special about her, isn't there? Compare, as you're reading this first part or you're reviewing your notes, what's the difference between the attitude or the emotion of Montague and his wife and the attitude of Clarice and her uncle and her family? I think you can see there's a pretty big difference between them. Clarice and her family seem happy, don't they? And of course, compared to his wife, Guy Montague's wife, which they talk about, where is she? Mildred. That's on page 10. On page 10, you should have annotated Mildred is his wife, and you see she is not happy. It indicates that she's had an overdose. She took too many sleeping pills. Often people do that to try to kill themselves. So we're not sure why Clarice is happy right now. And we're not sure why Montague and his wife are sad. But we are going to find out as we continue to read the novel, but I want you to think about that as we continue through. So as we continue then, we know that Guy Montag has met Clarice. Actually, her name is on page 4, Clarice McClellan. Again, you should have annotated page 4, Clarice McClellan. And she's a very happy girl, and she's only 17 years old. But they live near each other because we know that he can hear her family sometimes at night, and he meets her out in front of the place where he lives, Montag does. He meets Clarice there. And of course, they tell you a little bit about bottom of page 5. Here's something interesting. They're talking, and she says, do you mind if I ask how long you've worked at being a fireman? And Montag replies, since I was 20, 10 years ago. So here we have to make an inference, right? He's 10 years ago and he's 20 now, so he must be 30 years old. Okay, and he asked, do you ever read any of the books you burn? This is the little girl Clarice, or the 17-year-old girl Clarice. And he laughed and said, that's against the law. So imagine for a minute a future time when reading books is against the law. How do you think that would change our society if people could no longer read? And of course, this was from before they had the internet and computers, but imagine if people were not only destroying books, but also destroying reading material on the internet. What would that do to us? What would it do to our ability to know things and our experiences of the world? This book asks us here to think about that. As I said earlier in this lecture review, on page 6, they talk about burning all these famous authors. Whitman, Millman, and Faulkner. These are all very famous, Millay, are all very famous authors here. And then we go to another section where they're describing the world here. And he describes how sometimes people in this culture, in this imagined future, are moving very quickly. The little girl talks about how people move so quick that they can't see the flowers or see the world in any kind of beautiful way. So we know that that will probably not have a good effect on us. Already we know some of this future is true, because today things are moving very quickly and maybe people don't have enough time to appreciate things. So even though this is an imagined future, it's a future that we should be thinking about, that make us think about our present and how we want to change the future. Okay, we see that Montag is not happy at the bottom of page 9. It says, and you should have annotated, he saw darkness. He was not happy. He was not happy. Okay, so he realizes now, at the beginning, you see that he's pretty happy with his job as a fireman, burning the books. He kind of likes the smell of the kerosene that burns the books and happy. But now we see on page 9, he's talked to Clarice and something's changing in him. He's realizing, maybe I'm not really happy. Okay, I wanted to help you understand that on page 10, they're talking about thimble radios. Really what they're talking about is just earbuds like we wear today. Little small speakers that go in your ears. So we can see that Ray Bradbury, the author of this novel, he saw a good view of the future. He saw accurate, I should say, not good, but he saw accurate view. So his wife, Mildred, has been listening to earbuds on the speakers. Instead of reading, they only listen to things now, apparently. Okay, so there he finds her overdosed. She's almost dead. He calls the emergency room. The emergency room comes. Okay, so the emergency people do save the wife, but it's not even doctors. Apparently this happens so often, we see at the bottom of page 13, that in fact they just send like auto mechanics out to help these people who have overdosed. And you could say that this kind of hints of a social problem. If we look in the middle of page 13, you should have annotated that. One of the guys says, why didn't they send an MD from emergency? The operator says, hell, he's smoking a cigarette. We get these cases 9 or 10 a night. So 9 or 10 times a night, these people have to go out and save someone who's tried to kill themselves from taking too many sleeping pills. So that tells you something's very wrong in this imagined future. Okay, so on page 14, we also see that there's laughter coming from Clarice and her father and mother and uncle's house. So they're having an enjoyable conversation that says their laughter was relaxed and hearty. And now we see Montague is comparing his life to the life of Clarice and her family, which is much happier. But he doesn't know why they're happier. He just knows they're happy. And you see at the top of page 15, he's wondering, what are they saying? He just wants to listen. Okay, so he wants their company. Maybe he's a lonely man. And he's now realizing that he's not happy either. We see at the bottom another ominous or scary kind of thing, which is he takes a sleeping pill to go to sleep. So it seems like these people in this future imagined world are very dependent on drugs to get them through the day. Okay, on the next page, you know, when his wife wakes up, she's back to her normal self. She doesn't remember anything wrong that happened. She's just listening to the happy sounds of her thimble radios. A thimble is a small piece that you wear on your finger when sewing, but they're talking about thimble radios. They go in your ears, like our earbuds today. That helps you understand that particular part. Okay, we also see on page 18 that instead of reading books, what do? They watch a lot of TV. And the TVs are very fancy in this imagined world where they project the images up on the walls. And they're saying she wants another wall of a TV so it would feel like she's actually inside the theater, kind of like our 3D movies of today. Okay, so we get an idea of what it is they do for entertainment. When they don't have books to read, they watch TV. Well, is that good or is that bad? I think we're going to find out. Okay. All right, then that brings us really to the end of that first reading assignment. And you see I've annotated a lot of things here. He's kind of confused because he doesn't see how Clarice seems different from the other people. I believe that's what they're talking about. He's kind of confused. He said at the bottom of the page it said, and then very slowly he walked, just tilted his head back in the rain for just a few minutes and opened his mouth. So here he's looking up into the rain, opening his mouth and tasting it, something that he never would have done before he met Clarice. That's the teenager that lives near him. So they are kind of getting to know each other a little bit more here at the end of this reading selection. So we are going to find out more about what makes Clarice happy and what's making Guy Montague, the fireman, and his wife Mildred, what's making them sad and upset. I think we're going to find out more as we read forward, but I hope that this video lecture on the first 21 pages has given you a little bit more of an idea of what's going on. And I certainly want you to ask on the discussion board for this week. I'm opening up the discussion board for questions, observations, and thoughts about the reading assignment, not just the first one from 0 to 21, but also the next one from 21 to I think it's 37. So we're going to go ahead and read the next section for this week as well. So please continue to read the novel. Do your best to understand it. Use the internet if you're confused about certain things. The internet can help you understand some things as you work your way through the novel as well. Please annotate, of course. Have your pen or pencil handy. I've showed you some of my annotations as we've gone through this first part of the textbook. And those are the kinds of annotations that I would like you to make in your book as well. Your annotations don't have to be exactly the same as mine. What's important to you or what's confusing to you might be different from my ideas. So certainly make notes and make sure that you can use our discussion board to ask questions of others and maybe even answer some of your classmates' questions. So that's the end of our video lecture on Fahrenheit 451. Please continue to read the next section as I describe in our announcement section on Blackboard. Good luck to you, and I will see you all again on Thursday. Good luck with your reading and your homework. Thanks.